everybody, welcome back to my channel and thank you for clicking on another video. My name's Anastasia and today I'm going to be doing a get ready with me chit chat video. I'm gonna do a glam look. I posted on my Facebook group that I would do whoever posts the first look is the look I'm going to do. So I will insert a picture here for you to see the look that was the first commented. I'm actually going to be talking about all the jobs that I've had in my life, and I have had 16 jobs. I have them all written out here, and I'm going to go through each one and kind of share some fun little stories, maybe not for all of them, but for some of them, things, memories that just stand out to me. I'm going to be sharing in this video, and I'm honestly grateful for every single job that I've had. It has brought me to where I am today, so I'm grateful. I'm just going to be chatting with you throughout this video as I get ready. Okay, so my first job, I do not count in the total of the 16, but I do want to talk about this, my early years of learning to make money. My first ever thing that I can remember of what I did to make extra money when I was younger, and when I say younger, I mean probably like 11. I used to make little bracelets out of yarn. I used to make stress balls out of balloons and baking powder. And I would try to sell them in front of my house. So I would put out a little stand. I was in business to sell these stress balls to stressed out adults that were driving by on my street. I remember people would stop because, I mean, who's not gonna stop and support a little child trying to make some money? So I gained a couple dollars from that, I'm sure. I would rake people's lawns, and I would cut the grass, and I would do that for like, I don't know, $5 a yard. It was crazy. And then I would split it with my friend because we were like in business together. So everything we split down in the middle. So yeah, that was fun. I also have to mention that I would have my mom buy me bags and bags of blow pops, and I would sell them on the school bus for 50 cents a blow pop. So I was killing it in the lollipop gang when I was in, say, middle school. It was when it was most lucrative for me. So when I was in, it must have been high school, I think it was probably 9th grade, and I took home ec, and we learned how to do CPR. So everybody needs a babysitter. That's like the standard thing for a young teenage girl to do, is like babysit for some extra money. So I'm like so excited that I got qualified for CPR on little babies. So I'm like, oh, I could totally use this to my advantage. It will set me apart. So this was like I said, 9th grade. So I don't know how old that is, but I was, pretty young. And I decided that I needed business cards. But I was like, yeah, I could just make my own. So I actually made my own business cards out of regular lined paper, and I put all my information on it, and I needed them to be laminated. So clearly I didn't have a laminator, so tape would work. So I just taped both sides, and I called it laminated. So I had like maybe 10 that I created, and then I decided I needed to go and meet people. So I went out door to door, and I would talk to the people who answered and say, here's my babysitting services. And one lady asked, how old are you? And I told her, and I said, but I am CPR certified. I did not book any babysitting jobs from there. I did do some babysitting later on in life for my best friend's aunt, but the door-to-door laminated business cards didn't work for me. I don't know why. So I just thought that would be funny to share. So I've been, as long as I can remember, an entrepreneur. So I grew up with, watching my dad do every job under the sun. I remember he had a box about like this big. It looked like a little bit longer than a checkbook box. So, and it was filled with business cards, and there was probably 15 different jobs on each card that my dad has done, different business names that were never real legit businesses, but he promoted himself and got jobs to do whatever he wanted to do. So, and then I had my mom, who was just always a hard worker and a single mom, and watching her, you know, also had a big role in my mentality of working. So it started at a very young age. Let's get into like my first like legit job. So when I was in high school, obviously I needed a car to get to work. So that was like working age, 16. So what did I do? I went to the hospital. Now, some of the jobs that I've done, I've worked for a lot of family-owned businesses, so I'm not going to be sharing the actual business names on some of them, but I will just talk about, you know, the job and what it was. I went and I applied for a job, and I got it. And I was a food service worker, and I actually really loved that job. They had a position where it was called Start, and you would basically put the trays together, like picking out all of the types of condiments based on the person's diet. So I really liked that. It was just like you would have like lemon juice and salt, pepper, and like all these different packets, and you would just like grab it, throw it together, and then pass the tray on. And I just loved it. I don't know, that position was the best. I always had morbid curiosity about the morgue. So every time they would come down, we would like see, it was like this green stretcher, and then it had like a box over it, like PVC pipe, and then like a green drape, so that way you couldn't see like a body shape or anything like that. So I would always like come out and say, you know, can I come in with you? Can I check out what's in there? And they would let me, and I would get to see, and I always had like this, like, I don't know, it was just like interest, I guess you could say. So I was at the time in high school still, obviously, and I was taking a CNA class, and she had challenged us to go and do a report on different jobs that are linked to the medical field. And we had to do like this in-depth project on like how much these people make. We had to interview people in the position and that we were, you know, doing the report on. So I chose funeral directing. So I figured, because I had such a morbid curiosity and things didn't bother me that bothered other people, I got more and more interested in the funeral business. So I did the whole report. I actually fell in love with the career aspect, and I wanted to pursue it. So I decided that I was going to work for a funeral home and try to get a job and do all that. And I went to a local funeral home. I met with the owner, and he did everything to try and discourage me from pursuing the position. He was like, you know, this is awful hours, you're gonna not get good pay, and if you're in this for the money, then you know this is not the position that you want to go after. And then he's like, with all that being said, do you still want the job? And I'm like, yeah. And I didn't hesitate. I'm the type of person that when I make up my mind about something, then I could just, you know, I just do it, I pursue it. And everybody should be that way, where, you know, if you want to do something in your heart, just go after it. Just go after it until you get what you want, and you know, it'll come together if you're consistent and persistent. So he hired me to, you know, laminate prayer cards, open doors at funerals, and, you know, kind of just be like an extra as needed staff member. And I remember I asked him, I said, you know, can I go in the back in the prep room, and, you know, can I assist in any way? And because I had taken the CNA class, I had my shots and everything that I needed to be around, you know, the deceased. So it worked out, and he started to allow me to help out and assist and clean and do all that, and it was awesome. I really loved it. I love that aspect of it, that scientific aspect, and I just knew that that was going to be a focus in my career. So then I moved to New York to go to college for funeral directing. So I went to mortuary school, and And the reason why I moved to New York was because the school that I found was actually specialized in funeral directing, and I could finish in 16 months rather than 2 years. So I said, that's a great enough reason for me. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move there and pursue this. And you know, my mom was like not happy about it, and she kind of just like let me figure it out. She was like, you know, you want to do this, you can figure out how to get an apartment, and you can, you know, do what you need to do and line it all up, because I'm not helping, basically. That actually did a lot of good for me, because it helped me to learn, and to, like, that was my first step of like really being an adult, was figuring out living situation, job, you know, what I need to do to survive on my own. So that was pretty cool. And at the time it was like, oh, this feels so hard, but it really did teach me persistence as well, because here I am now, freshly 18, no credit, no money, and have to get an apartment. And I got so lucky that I was looking on Craigslist and I found this apartment. I spoke to the guy, I told him my situation. My dad was willing to co-sign, but he didn't have good credit. So everywhere that we were calling for apartments, it was just like, and sorry, I'll get off this topic in a minute. Sorry, I don't know how we got on this tangent. If you want to know more about my experience in New York, just let me know. So I found this guy, and he was a realtor, and he was willing to hold the apartment for me, and he was willing to accept my dad's signature without checking his credit. I was like, wow, thank you, Lord. So I was able to move to New York, went to college, and I had to work full-time, obviously, because I had bills now, and it was time to grow up, and I was going to school full-time. The reason why the school was so fast is that, you know, you had to go full-time. So it was Monday through Friday, tests every day, so you had to study on any downtime that you had, but I didn't have downtime because I had to be working. My first job there was at Staples, and also I was a CNA. So I had gotten my first CNA job, and it was absolutely awful. It was at a nursing home, and it's just not for me. The position's just not for me, and it was really difficult. So I was having to get up at like 4 a.m. and be at work by 6, and it was just, I'm not a morning person. And then going to school, it was just awful. Man, I have stories about New York. So if you want to know more about that, we'll do another story time for sure. Just let me know in the comment section. Oh, so the CNA job didn't last very long. It was probably a 2-month, 3-month job, but I had already been working at Staples. So I just said, whatever, I can't do this, and I quit. I had to get another job, obviously, and I am just really blessed in the fact that whenever I needed a job, like the day I go out and get a job, and I got really, really lucky and blessed to just be able to have a job quickly and not have to go through a waiting process. So I actually got a job in sales at Zales, the diamond store. That was I liked the job. The boss was crazy, but I really did like the job. That's where I kind of started to get really more into sales, and I really loved selling like rings and jewelry. That was a fun job for me. And then my next job was at a gym, and I was in charge of like, you know, working the register and making shakes. I liked making the shakes. That was like the funnest part of the job, was just making the protein shakes. So I did that up until moving back. So my intent was to stay in New York and do my internship there, and then get licensed there and transfer it down here. So I moved back to Florida, and I got my internship with the same funeral home that I worked for before I moved to New York. So that was pretty cool, because I called him and I just said, you know, hey, I'm licensed now. Will you take me as your intern? And he said yes. So that was pretty awesome. So that was like really my first career job, and it was pretty awful, actually. I guess I've just never been built to work for someone else. It took me a long time to realize that. So I would always just like be eaten up with like stress and like wanting to create and do my own thing and not being able to was really like hard for me. So anyway, he was like trying to figure out what to do with me, and one of his businesses, well, two of his businesses weren't doing so well in Groveland and Claremont. So he basically was just like, you know, go see what you could do with it. If you could, you know, turn things around, great. That's the goal. So he kind of let me like have some free reign over there, and that was like one of the happiest times for me in my career. He basically allowed me to figure out how to make the business succeed. So I started doing like community events and meeting the people in the community, volunteering my time, working in nursing homes, baking cookies. That was just so fun. I loved that part of the business, part of the job. You know, just going and building the business from the ground up again. And I got to do that, and in about 6 months, the business was turned around to the point where he found someone local that would take over, and he wanted me to go to Tampa and to do the same thing, rebuild, restructure, get more business. Well, Tampa is a much bigger market than a Claremont or a Groveland. So when it comes to building relationships with people, yes, you can do it. It's just going to take more time. And I mean, there's some other details of like why I didn't work there anymore, but I won't get into that in this video. If you want to know about it, let me know. I was basically, you know, in charge down there. I was the funeral director in charge with the state. And then I was, you know, in charge of the staff and hiring and, you know, redesigning and repairing things and kind of redecorating. It was just a really awesome time in my career. I loved it, and the business was thriving, so he was kind of like not on my back anymore, and he was like, wow, she's doing a good job. So that was cool. Then when I went to Tampa, it just wasn't going as fast as he wanted, and you know, so he just decided that, you know, he didn't want me to work for him anymore. So after that, I was devastated. Like, this was my first job. I loved it. I've grown attached to the man that was kind of my mentor in embalming. And I just, you know, I'm just a like very loyal person. So it takes a lot for me to give up or quit, you know, on someone or a job or anything like that. So yeah, so that was devastating. And I was like, I kind of like threw a tantrum, and I was like, you know what? I told he was my fiance at the time, I think. Maybe we were just dating. But I told him that I wasn't going to work for another funeral home unless they called looking for me. Like, I wasn't going through the application process. They had to come looking for me. And I'm like, no way is that even going to happen, because I thought, you know, nobody really knew. So sure enough, and then also I had like 2 specific funeral homes. I was like, and I'm only going to work for XYZ. So one of the funeral homes that I wanted to work for actually called me, and they were looking for a funeral director and like a weekend manager to kind of like run things on the weekends. So I was like, okay, well, I'll go interview, and I got the job. And I did that for, I was a funeral director for 5 years before I left the field. So I think I worked with the first funeral home for like 3 years, 2-3 years, and then I worked for like another 2 years with the next one. So I left. Before I left, I started in direct sales with a company I'm not going to mention, but I was in direct sales for 5 years, and I was a leader in the company, and I left for a lot of reasons. So I did that. That was my next job, and I did that for 5 years. So I quit the funeral business, and then I was doing direct sales. In the midst of all this, I was doing hair and makeup on the side. I was also karaoke DJing on the side. I picked that job up, and that was fun, and I still do that once in a while. So I really love that. I love to sing, I love to entertain, and DJing is a fun job. I've always had like side hustles. Also, I forgot to mention I was a home health CNA for a while too before I went to the second funeral home. After I left the first direct sales company I was with, I then joined 2 new companies, Tomorrow's Leaf and Monate. And those are companies I'm currently still representing, and I love the products, and the link to my websites are always in my video description box. Recently a wedding venue manager, which was awesome. I loved working with families and I loved the job, and I just loved watching the weddings come together. Oh, I forgot to mention, I was also before I joined the direct sales company, I started my own company. And that was called Baby Bellies. And I did pregnancy belly casting, children's keepsakes, such as the little hands, like if you've ever seen the little statue imprints of hands and feet, I could do that. And then the belly cast. Company that was called Baby Bellies, and in the funeral home I was in, I was super stressed out to the point where it caused me to have a miscarriage. And then I decided that I was going to start my own business, and when I did, it just kind of, you know, took my focus off of things, and it was working out. Anyway, so it was a niche market. So not everybody wanted a belly cast, which is fine. It wasn't going to be sustainable for me financially. So I quickly realized that was not going to pay the bills. So in the midst of networking and meeting people, I stumbled across the company, the first direct sales company that I was going to join. So I've just been focusing on building up my YouTube, building up my brand, and meeting new people and networking and creating relationships. And that's my favorite part. Meeting people, having an impact. I guess that's what we all want at some point in our life. So that pretty much sums up all my jobs. Conclusion to the story. If you find that it's hard for you to work for someone else, find something that you're passionate about and make it your career. You can literally do whatever you want, and it doesn't matter what other people think. So I'm excited that I was able to share my stories with you guys, and I have plenty of stories to talk about. So if you're interested in seeing more videos like this, chit chat, get ready with me, let me know. This look is a little crazy, very vampy, but this was my rendition of the inspiration picture. So let me know what you guys think in the comments about this video and this look. And thanks for sticking around and watching. I really appreciate your time, and I cannot wait to see you on the next one. Take care. Bye.